What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Crossover U College Hoop Stock Podcast, brought to you as always right here on the Crossover Media Network. My name is Kanaye, and we have some breaking news coming here in the world of college basketball. Really, really important. One of the most important draft deadline decisions by a player deciding whether to stick around the draft, trying to go pro, or to come back to school. That being Otega Oweh, he has just announced that he will be running it back for another year in Lexington, and Kentucky gets Mr. Consistent back. Their leading scorer from this past season. I'm sure Mark Pope is ecstatic to have him back. And he really kind of shapes out what I would argue is the most talented roster head to toe in the country going into next year. And I definitely think it was important. I think it was the right choice for him to come back. I do have some concerns about Kentucky's roster, not talent wise, but I'll get into that in this episode and I'll break down the decision and what it means for Kentucky. But before we get into all of that, if you like this podcast or anything else you see on this channel, please engage with our videos in any way you can, whether it's liking them, subscribing to our channel, or just telling other people about it. It really does help with being able to continue to grow what we do here at the Crossover. Now, let's get into it. Otega Oweh this past year at Kentucky averaged 16.2 points, 4.7 rebounds, and nearly 2 assists, 49.2% from the field, 35% from three. Really, really great numbers. He was awesome in the SEC conference play. I know there was a string of games where he scored 20 points consistently. I forget how many games in a row it was, but he was really consistent um, in SEC play for Kentucky, and he had a really solid NCAA tournament too. Of course, their run got cut short. Injuries did not help whatsoever, and Kentucky lost some guys in the portal, but they completely reloaded in what they were able to pluck out of the portal. Some of those guys being Denzel Aberdeen coming over from the Florida Gators national championship team, Jaden Quaidance from Arizona State, Mohamed Diabate from Alabama, who I think is going to be really, really good. On top of that, you have Jasper Johnson coming in, Jalen, who's going to be a freshman, Jalen Lowe from Pittsburgh, and just what it really is a completely loaded backcourt for Kentucky. And I really do think it kind of came down to just Otega really testing the waters. I think he wanted to get a lot of the feedback. I don't know if there was ever a real possibility that Otega was going to stay in the draft. I do know that recently there was the news that came out that NBA scouts actually really liked what they saw out of Otega. But for most of the year, I really felt that a lot of the narrative surrounding his draft stock was that he was being valued at being a top 50 or maybe a 50, going somewhere in the 40s, 50, 60 range. And again, I don't think that's what you want to hear if you're Otega. I definitely think that he is making the right choice, just considering how much money he's going to be making at Kentucky for another year coming back for a senior season. Just with how much Kentucky spent in the portal, I believe the number is in the range of 18 to 22 million, and Otega is probably going to be getting the largest amount of that of all the players that are going to be on this Kentucky Wildcats roster next year. And again, he's really consistent. I do think there is another level to his game he can progress to. As a playmaker, I know he doesn't really play the one, and they're probably gonna have a combination of Denzel Aberdeen and Jalen Lowe being able to do that for them next year. But I do think if he can improve as a playmaker and be more facilitator at times rather than just kind of having a score only mindset, I think that would definitely prove more to in the eyes of NBA scouts and GMs of him being a true professional NBA player that's going to be valued in the top 30 to 40 players in next year's draft. And I definitely think Otega's capable of it. He's a guy who I immediately have on All-American watch the second he announced he was coming back, and I will definitely be probably on my first team All-American preseason All-American list that me and Josh put out whenever we do get those out to you guys as next season comes closer in the coming months. But again, I do think there is that next level that he can jump to as a player. But again, I think he needs to prove that he's a playmaker. I'd like to see him get up to 18, 19 points per game, but it is going to be tough to do that just considering how crowded this backcourt is for Kentucky and just how talented of a roster they have head to toe. Which is kind of my concerns that I've voiced previously on other episodes on this podcast with some of the videos I've done with Josh as well, that we've put out together in segments where guys 1 through 13, 14 on this team are all dudes. Like they legitimately have 13, 14 guys who can you give them the ball, they can go and make a play. They can go and get you a basket at any given point in any given game. And that's just what kind of concerns me in terms of keeping guys happy and how well this roster is going to mesh together. You're bringing in a lot of guys, and you don't have all too much continuity outside of guys such as Brandon Garrison, um, Trent Noah, and Colin Chandler, but and now Otega Oweh. But you've already seen some guys transfer out, such as Travis Perry, who's now at Ole Miss, and Mark Pope came out and talked about how crushing it was seeing Travis leave the program as someone who is from Kentucky and an in-state kid that you think you could definitely grow over the course of 2 3 years and see him have a really great college career in his hometown, his home state school, and it is unfortunate to see that stuff like that, and that continues to worry me about how guys on this roster are going to mesh. If I were to guess what the starting lineup for this Kentucky team is going to be, I would probably guess. I very much feel that Denzel Aberdeen is in a better position to start at the point over Jalen Lowe, just considering he has a little bit of a bigger frame and he does have more experience running the point and coming off the bench at Florida than I think some of the other guards on this team do. Of course, there's the potential that someone like Jasper Johnson um, or even Jalen Lowe, it definitely has the potential to start too at the point. But I feel like Denzel Aberdeen is more equipped in terms of his experience, his physical makeup, and just actually playing the point in the past too. Um, but I would guess it's going to be Denzel Aberdeen at the point, Otega Oweh at the two. I would guess Mohamed Diabate at the three, Jaden Quaidance at the four, and Brandon Garrison rounding it out at the five. Um, I definitely feel that is a really, really talented starting group to have. And I think Otega, getting him back was crucial just because he knows the system now. He's going to be able to take a lot of pressure off the guys who are now playing in their first year as transfers, or if you're a freshman coming in. Of course, there's a lot to handle. Playing in the SEC, playing at a school the caliber of Kentucky, having a guy like Otega who's so consistent, really even keeled at pretty much all times, who understands what Mark Pope wants and how to run stuff offensively and defensively. I think it's going to take a lot of pressure off of a lot of the guys. But again, just still worry how happy Mark Pope is going to be able to keep everybody on this roster, just considering you can't give everyone 20 to 25 minutes a game. It's just not going to work. And a lot of these guys are all capable of being starters on most Power 5 programs. I am really curious to see how Mark Pope manages this. But again, no one is doubting that this team is probably the most talented head to toe in the country going to next year, just for what they have scoring wise. Jalen Lowe, who actually announced that he's withdrawn from the draft several days back, which I didn't make a video on, but I guess I could kind of cover it here. He was a great scorer at Pittsburgh this past year. I'm sure he's going to bring that next year in the SEC too. But you combine him with Otega, I would think Jalen maybe comes off the bench as a dynamic sixth man, bring a lot of scoring punch off the bench, spark plug. Denzel Aberdeen's going to bring defense. It's good size in the backcourt. It's going to bring playmaking, considering they've played point guard in the past for Florida. And I mean, Jaden Quaidance and Mohamed Diabate, those are two guys who I think could take huge leaps coming out of schools where maybe didn't necessarily work out before. But again, Otega is what's going to drive all of it. It all ties back to Otega. And I mean, again, I've talked about it several times in this video, just the consistency and how well he played in SEC regular season play last year. I'm really excited to see if he can make the jump that I talked about previously in this episode, where he can become a little bit of a better playmaker, get other guys the ball, and really kind of come into his own as a leader. I think last year he wasn't necessarily the oldest guy on the team, and maybe kind of took a back seat at times to other guys when it came to leading. But I definitely think this year is going to be a much bigger leading position, and a lot of guys are going to look to him, and it's all going to come down to Otega, I think, for most points of the season. So I'm really excited to see how Mark Pope manages this Kentucky Wildcats team, just with the roster being as loaded as it is. I really am curious as to how he's going to be able to keep everyone happy and get guys on the floor. But again, that's kind of what college basketball is nowadays. You don't see as much continuity as you used to in player development. Travis Perry would have been one of those guys that you have to kind of continue to build that culture up that Mark Pope is building in Lexington. In this revamped Kentucky program since the departure of Cal. And to lose an in-state kid who, I mean, has a lot of talent, could probably been a really, really good player 3 years down the road. It's hard to argue with him if he wants to get on the floor, and he's going to be able to do that. Ole Miss wasn't going to be probably not going to be able to this upcoming season if he stayed with Kentucky. But I mean, again, that's kind of what it is. Teams are going after transfers. They're prioritizing those guys over maybe keeping guys around and developing them. Those guys are getting recruited over, and it is unfortunate to see, but it does make for some really really loaded rosters, which is what's going to be the case for Kentucky this upcoming season. And again, really really important for them to get Otega Oweh back. I'm super psyched to see him for another year in college basketball. I definitely felt that was the right move for him, just considering financially how much he's going to make. And on top of that, being able to develop for one more year under that coaching staff and prove to scouts that he can kind of take the next he can get to the next level as a player and really improve in the facets of the game that he got feedback on from NBA scouts and GMs. But I think that's going to take care of everything I have for this episode today. Please, as always, engage with our content any way you can. It really does go a long way in helping grow this channel. And until the next episode, I'll see you all next time.